Welcome to Manifested Publishers.
Welcome, my dear learner, to our today's lesson. We are going to have a lesson in history and government, and we are tackling the topic European invasion of Africa and the process of colonization. We have been studying this topic, and we have looked at how the Europeans invaded Africa, how they scrambled and partitioned Africa. Now, in our previous lesson, we introduced the African reactions to the European colonization. How did the Africans react to the process of colonization and the insertion of the European power on them? And we said the Africans reacted in two ways. The first one was by resisting the colonial rule. In other instances, there was collaboration. They welcomed them and they worked together with the Europeans to make sure that their livelihood continued. So those are the two ways in which the Africans reacted, in which how the Africans took the process of colonization. And my dear learner, if you can remember correctly, we introduced or we looked at the first resistance, and we were discussing the Maji rebellion. Can you remember which year the rebellion broke out and how long it lasted? Very good. We said that it started in 1905 to 1907, and in our previous lesson we discussed in detail the causes of this rebellion. So if you were not together with us, I could refer you to our previous videos. You could go and see and enlighten yourself of the reasons why the Maji rebellion broke out. What were the reasons? What were the causes of that rebellion? And as you remember, we mentioned even the communities that were involved in that rebellion. We said that it was against the German rule in Tanganyika. So, my dear learner, today we are going to go a step further and look at how the Maji rebellion went on, and then we shall identify the reasons for the failure of the Maji rebellion. That is our first goal. And then number two, we are going to discuss the results of the Maji rebellion. So as the rebellion was going on, at some point it failed. So we are going to interrogate what are these reasons that made the rebellion to fail. And then number two, we shall discuss what are the results. What were the results? What was the impact of the rebellion? Right? So to start us with, let us look at a brief overview of how the war took place. Let us look at the cause. And when we talk of the cause, we are asking ourselves, how did the war progress? How did they fight? Who was fighting where and how? So in our previous lesson, I mentioned, my dear learner, that the architect or the one who organized this rebellion was a man. What was his name? Very good. Kinjekitile Ngware. Kinjekitile Ngware. So this was a Kolero priest. This was a priest. Kolero priest. And I mentioned these priests told the people that he had discovered some magic water. Some magic water, which was referred to as Maji. Thus, the name Maji rebellion. So, this magic water, these priests told the people that this water could make them immune. It could make them immune to the German bullets. It could make them immune to the German bullets. So that when they went to fight, if you had sprinkled this water on yourself, the German bullets would not harm you. So the people believed in that, and they came up in arms. So how did they fight? So they came up and refused. They refused to provide their labor. Remember, we said the main reason why they fought against the Germans was because of the cotton growing program, where they were forced to work in German farms to produce cotton. So the first act of their revolt was they refused to go and work in this. They refused to go and work in these cotton farms. So they revolted. That was an act. Apart from that, they resorted to attacking. They attacked German posts where the German officials were leading. They attacked them, and they also attacked the shops belonging to the Swahili and the Arabs. The Swahili and Arabs. The Swahili and the Arabs. Remember these, we said the chiefs and the headmen were drawn from these two communities who are not natives of the people of Tanganyika. So these people, apart from going to attack the German posts, they also went and attacked these shops to show their rage, or to show their dissatisfaction with the German rule. So while they was doing this, the Germans saw that the people were at some point trying to overcome them. So they resorted, or the Germans decided, the Germans asked for help. So the Germans got reinforcement. From other German colonies. So they went and got people to come and help them fight or bring down or quench the rebellion. And also they got mercenaries. They got mercenaries from the Zulu, from the Zulu and the Somali. So they got mercenaries. These are paid warriors. So they got people from Zulu and Somali and paid them to help them fight these communities. And you remember the communities that we mentioned. We mentioned the Gindo, we mentioned the Zaramo, we mentioned the Gindo. So the Germans, because they were not a large army, right, decided to pay some people or some other communities to come and help them fight the people of Tanganyika. These were the Zulu and the Somali. So when and they got a scheme that we refer to as the scorched earth policy. So they implemented this policy, the scorched earth policy, which means once they attacked, for example, the village belonging to the Gindo, right, they would burn down every property. If there was some farms, they would destroy those farms to make sure that the people did not have a source of livelihood. This was to make sure that the economy had been crumbled. So apart from that, they when the people saw that all this was happening, the traditional communities, they resorted to guerrilla warfare. They resorted to guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare. What does that mean? They could come and attack. For example, they go and attack a German post as the Africans. Then they would resort into the forest and hide. They would attack and then go and hide. So these people, the Germans, together with the mercenaries they had hired, would not know where these people are, because they would come and attack most of the time at night and then go and hide. So you will not know who attacked at what time. So you will not have time to fight, because there is no confrontation. You would not know. They would just come impromptu, out of nowhere, come and attack and then run, go and hide. But in 1907, the people or the traditional communities were defeated. By the Germans together with these mercenaries that had been hired. So some of the people fled. So this effectively led to the end of the rebellion. Now, my dear learner, let us ask ourselves, what are the reasons why this rebellion? Remember, we mentioned there were so many communities that had come together to fight against the Germans. Why did the rebellion at this year come to an end 2 years later? Why did it come to an end? So we look at the reasons for failure of the rebellion. Reasons for the failure of the rebellion. So quickly, my dear learner, let us mention them. The reasons why the rebellion failed. Why did it fail? So the first and the most or the biggest reason why they failed was lack of military training. Lack of military training. The Africans did not have a time to train for war. Kinjekitile Ngware, after he had discovered this medicine, just gave them some simple tactics to go and fight against the Germans. So this gave them a disadvantage against the well-trained German soldiers. Remember, when we were talking of the reasons for the coming, or for the reasons for the scramble, there were some generals in the wars or in the army, in the European powers. They wanted to come and fight so that they could show their might, meaning they were well trained, but the Africans were not trained. So that is the first reason. And then number two, they had inferior weapons. They had inferior weapons, as opposed to the Germans, who used guns. They used repeater rifles, right? The Africans had swords, they had arrows, right, and bows, right? And also we could talk of daggers, right? These are rudimentary weapons, opposed to the Germans, who had very powerful guns. So they were no match to the Germans, because if a German could just stand at afar and shoot several Africans, but an African will require to go near the German so that they could attack them. So that gave them a disadvantage, and that brought them to the failure. And then number three, failure of the magic water. So the water or the magic that gave them the motivation to go and fight failed. They discovered that it was not bulletproof. It was not making them immune to the water, as opposed to what Kinjekitile Ngware had told them, that that bullet would become like water. But now they discovered they were being, they were dying. The bullets could get to them, and it could not protect them. And then number 4, there was disunity. Disunity among the communities. Disunity among the communities. Excuse me. Disunity among the communities. Disunity among the communities. So you will find that some communities in Tanganyika failed to join the rebellion. An example are the Hehe and the Nyamwezi. I'm sure you have met or you have heard of this community. So these communities did not join, who are also of a bigger percentage of the population, failed to join into the rebellion, thus weakening them, because there was only a small number of the community fighting against the Germans. And then the next thing, the Germans got reinforcement. The Germans got reinforcement. Reinforcement. They got support from other German armies in other parts of the continent. They also got support from these two communities that they paid, the mercenaries they got from the Zulu and the Somali, which made them stronger against the traditional communities in Tanganyika, which are other reasons that led to the failure. So number 6, let's look at 2 more. Another reason why the rebellion failed was the killing of African leaders. Killing of African leaders. So you'll find out that the Germans used this trick. The Africans were very loyal. The traditional communities were very loyal to their priests. They were very loyal to those leaders whom had been appointed to lead them. For example, Kinjekitile Ngware was somebody who was so much respected together with the other priests. And these are the people who marshaled up the people. So the Germans took these leaders and executed them or imprisoned them. Others were imprisoned, right? Others were imprisoned. Imprisonment. So, my dear Lana, these demoralized the Africans because they did not have somebody to lead them into the war. And then finally, my dear Lana, the Germans were ruthless. The Germans were ruthless in their handling of the Africans. They could whip, right? There was whipping and flogging, right? In other words, you can say they were inhumane. They were very tough at how they handled the Africans. So these inflicted fear. These inflicted fear on the Africans. They could not stand up and fight, because if you fought, you could be whipped, you could be flogged, and this is flogging. They could be whipped, you could be flogged. That would be not a very comfortable thing, and most of them tried to surrender. Most of them decided not to continue with the revolt. So those are some of the reasons why, or some of the reasons for the failure of the rebellion. Now, my dear learner, let us look at the results. What do you think were the results of this rebellion? What were the results? The results of the rebellion. The first and the most obvious one is there was a lot of loss of life. Loss of life. A lot of lives were lost. Many people were killed because they believed if you just go against the Germans, even without hiding, when they shoot you, you will not die. So they blindly went against the Germans. So many of them were killed. Number two, there was destruction of property. There was destruction of property. A lot of property was destroyed during the war. Remember, we said the revolt was involved attacking the German ports and burning down the shops. It went to as far as burning down the cotton farms. So there was destruction of a lot of property. And then number three, there was another result. There was a decrease, or the traditional religion. Traditional religion was despised. So after the failure of this magic water, which was part of their religion, it had been instituted by their priests. So the Africans lost confidence. They lost confidence in their traditional religion. They saw that their religion was a fallacy. It could not hold water. The water that was supposed to protect them did not. Yet they had believed, they had been assured by their priest that this was going to help them. So they were discouraged. They could not believe anymore in their religion. And then also there was displacement of people. So as the war was going on, a lot of people were pushed away from their homes because the Germans would come and attack. So when you are being attacked, what do? You run away. You do not just wait for somebody to come and kill you. You have to run away. So many people were displaced from their lands. We said towards the end, some even fled to neighboring countries, right? So they had to be displaced from their homes. And then the next result of the war, there was widespread famine and starvation. Widespread famine and starvation. The use of this policy, the scorched earth policy, made sure that there was no food that was left. There was no gallery or storage of food was left. Everything was burned down. At the same time, when people were fighting, they did not have time to go to their farms and produce food. What does that mean? Finally, they did not have a place to get a means of livelihood. They could not get food that was so much important to them for them to continue surviving. So there was a lot of starvation and famine. And then there arose tribal differences. There arose tribal differences. There arose tribal differences. Note this, my dear learner. I said the Hehe, these people, the Hehe, and the Nyamwezi did not take part in the rebellion. The other communities, the Zaramo, the Bena, the Gindo, right? All of them were involved in the war. But these two communities decided not to be involved in the war. This brought a lot of tribal differences between those who are supporting or those who are involved in the rebellion and those who did not want to be involved in the rebellion. And then lastly, my dear Lana, the last result, there was rise of, excuse me, let me use the same color. There was a rise of nationalism. Rise of nationalism. Apart from them being defeated, yes, they were defeated and they were subdued, but it arose in themselves a feeling of togetherness, a feeling of wanting to have their own independence, wanting to love and to get a time to continue having their own country or nation. So it was also a pointer. Other communities or other nations around them were also motivated to rise and stand for their rights or stand for their independence. So they started to fight. There was continued fight or a continued quest to try and bring the Germans away from them. Though they had now changed the attack, they now changed the attack. Apart from rebellion, they now started using constitutionalism. They could go and enact. They desired to get involved in their leadership. So the tact changed. They were still fighting for their independence, but now they were not fighting physically. They now changed their tact. So my dear Lana, as we come to the end of our lesson today, I want to give you some questions to help you conceptualize and to help you all to gauge how much you have understood in our lesson. So let us look at some revision questions. Revision questions. Question number 1. What were the results? What were the results of the Maji rebellion? And then number 2, identify the reasons. Identify the reasons. Identify the reasons for the failure of the Maji rebellion. And then lastly, my dear Lana, give one reason why the Africans in Tanganyika lost their faith in the traditional religion. And I'm sure, my dear Lana, you are able to attempt and answer those questions effectively. And with that, we have come to the end of our lesson today. I've been your teacher, Conan Gakure. Have a nice time.
Thank you for choosing to study with us. For more information, you can call us on 0724 173845.